The massive view screen aboard the International Space Defense Command showed nothing but static. General Maya Rodriguez stared at it, her weathered face illuminated by the flickering light. 12 hours ago, every major observatory on Earth had detected the vessels entering the solar system. 6 hours ago, they had broadcast their first message, a greeting in perfect English, claiming to be representatives of the Valerian Concordat. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady despite the tension filling the command center. "Still no response from any of our lunar bases, General," Lieutenant Chen reported, his fingers dancing across the holographic interface. "The last transmission we received suggested the aliens were initiating some kind of peaceful contact protocol. But then," he gestured at the static-filled screen. Rodriguez had spent 30 years preparing Earth's defenses for first contact. The Valerians had seemed perfect, advanced, diplomatic, even friendly. Their ships had approached openly, broadcasting peaceful intentions. They had shared technological insights as a gesture of goodwill. The lunar bases had welcomed them with hope and optimism. That hope died when the bases went dark. "New contact." The sensor operator's voice cut through the tense silence. "Multiple signatures emerging from behind Mars. Energy readings are off the charts." The static cleared, revealing a sight that made Rodriguez's blood run cold. The sleek, crystalline ships they had first encountered were gone. In their place, massive organic-looking vessels pushed through space, their surfaces writhing with what looked like living metal. "This is Supreme Commander Vex of the Valerian Harvester Fleet." The voice that filled the command center was no longer diplomatic or friendly. It held the cold efficiency of a predator. "Your species has been evaluated and found suitable for processing. Your resistance to environmental extremes and adaptive capabilities make you valuable resources. Submit, and a portion of your population will be preserved for study. Resist, and we will take what we need by force." Rodriguez's jaw tightened. "Open a channel," she ordered. The communications officer nodded. "This is General Rodriguez of Earth's Defense Command. We received your message clearly." She paused, letting her words hang in the air. "And here's our response. Earth is not a resource to be harvested. We are not specimens to be studied. We are not cattle to be processed. We are human beings, and we did not crawl out of the primordial soup, survive ice ages, plagues, and our own destructive nature just to submit to the first advanced species that came along." Warning klaxons blared as the Valerian ships began powering up their weapons. Rodriguez turned to her staff, her eyes burning with determination. "They think they're superior because they've never had to fight for survival like we have," she continued. "They evolved on a perfect world, in perfect conditions. But Earth is what they would call a death world. Every day of our existence has been a battle against forces that would destroy lesser species. We're not just survivors. We're the children of a planet that tried to kill us a million different ways, and we thrived anyway." The first shots from the Valerian fleet lit up space, targeting Earth's orbital defenses. But Rodriguez wasn't finished. She opened a channel to all Earth forces, her voice carrying to every soldier, pilot, and civilian who could hear. "They want to study our ability to adapt. Then let's show them what the children of Earth can do. Let's show them why you don't corner a species that evolved on a death world. All forces, implement Protocol Omega. We're taking this fight to the ground. Our ground. Let them follow us into the deserts, the Arctic, the depths of our oceans. Let them learn why Earth's harshest environments are our greatest weapons." As the Valerian fleet descended through Earth's atmosphere, they failed to understand one crucial fact. They weren't invading a peaceful world unprepared for conflict. They were entering an arena where every environment, every condition, every challenge had forged humanity into something unique in the galaxy. A species that didn't just survive adversity, but turned it into advantage. The battle for Earth was about to begin, and humanity was about to show the galaxy why you should never underestimate a species that called a death world home. Dr. Samira Hassan stood in the underground bunker beneath the Sahara Desert, watching thermal readings dance across her holographic display. Above, the daytime temperature had reached 136 degrees Fahrenheit, 58 degrees Celsius, hot enough to kill most living creatures. But for her team of desert warfare specialists, it was just another day at the office. The Valerians are expanding their landing zone, Captain James Torres reported, his dark skin glistening with thermoregulatory nanospray. They're trying to establish a foothold in what they think is uninhabitable terrain. He couldn't hide his grim smile. The aliens had expected Earth's extreme environments to provide them safe zones for establishing their bases. After all, what species would choose to fight in conditions that pushed the limits of biological survival? They were about to learn exactly why humans had earned their reputation as Deathworlders. "Show me their movements," Samira commanded. The holographic display expanded, revealing hundreds of Valerian troops and machinery spreading across the dunes. Their biomechanical armor systems were impressive, allowing them to operate in conditions that would normally be lethal. But those systems required enormous amounts of energy to maintain. Their cooling systems are already struggling, Torres noted, pointing to heat signatures that grew brighter by the minute. They didn't expect the sand to interfere with their thermal regulation this much. Even their best environmental suits can't match our natural adaptations combined with our desert warfare tech. Samira nodded, while the Valerians relied on complex technological systems to survive. Humanity had spent millennia adapting to Earth's harshest environments. The desert warfare teams had trained for years in these conditions, their bodies naturally adapting to extreme heat, while their minimal tech focused on enhancing these natural capabilities rather than replacing them. "All teams, prepare for Operation Sandstorm," Samira announced over the secure channel. "Remember, we're not just fighting aliens, we're fighting alongside Earth itself. Let's show them why this is our home." Across the Sahara, hundreds of hidden bunkers received the signal. The desert warfare teams emerged like ghosts from the sand, their bodies painted with thermal adaptive camouflage that mimicked the desert's heat signatures. They moved with the efficiency of people born to this environment, each step calculated to preserve energy and maximize impact. The Valerians never saw them coming. The first sign of attack came when their walker units began sinking into seemingly solid dunes, quicksand pockets that human forces had spent years mapping and learning to manipulate. As the alien machines struggled, their cooling systems overtaxed, teams of humans emerged from hidden positions, using handheld electromagnetic pulse devices that targeted the aliens' environmental control systems. "Their technology is failing," Torres reported with satisfaction. "Without their environmental suits, they're experiencing our world as it really is." The effect was devastating. Valerian troops, used to the controlled environments of their ships and their homeworld, found themselves exposed to conditions their bodies had never evolved to handle. Their superior technology, which had made them so confident, became a liability as systems crashed under the extreme conditions. But the desert teams were just getting started. Using centuries-old techniques combined with modern technology, they triggered massive sandstorms that their own bodies and equipment were perfectly adapted to navigate. To the Valerians, it was like fighting an enemy that had become one with the environment itself. "They're retreating," someone called out. The holographic display showed Valerian forces pulling back in disarray, their carefully planned invasion turning into a desperate scramble for survival. Samira allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before opening a channel to General Rodriguez. "Desert Theater reporting success. The Valerians are learning their first lesson about Earth's environments. They thought technology could overcome evolution. They were wrong." "Excellent work," Rodriguez replied. Similar reports are coming in from the Arctic teams. The Valerians try to establish bases in what they thought were inhospitable polar regions. They're learning the hard way why humans have thrived in every environment this planet has thrown at us. As Samira watched the retreating alien forces, she thought about the irony of the situation. The Valerians had come to study and harvest humanity's adaptive capabilities, But they had failed to understand the true source of those adaptations. It wasn't just about biology or technology. It was about the fundamental relationship between humans and their deadly yet nurturing homeworld. "What's our next move?" Torres asked, already preparing his teams for another engagement. "We keep pushing," Samara replied, her eyes fixed on the strategic display. The Valerians thought Earth's harsh environments would give them safe zones to operate from. Instead, these inhospitable regions are becoming their graveyards. Let them learn why you don't challenge a species that evolved on a death world in the very environments that made them strong. Across the planet, similar scenes were playing out in every extreme environment Earth had to offer. In the deepest oceans, human deep-sea teams were turning crushing pressures against the invaders. In the Arctic, generations of cold weather adaptation were proving superior to alien environmental systems. In the highest mountains, where thin air and brutal conditions prevailed, human mountaineering teams were turning their territory into killing grounds for the unprepared invaders. Earth itself had become humanity's greatest ally in this war, and its children were proving why they deserved to be called Deathworlders. The Valerians had wanted to study human adaptation. They were getting a lesson they would never forget. Commander Weichen's breath frosted in the thin air of Mount Everest's death zone, but his body, born and trained in Earth's highest places, barely noticed the lack of oxygen. From his vantage point at 26,000 feet, he watched Valerian ships struggling against the combination of high altitude, extreme cold, and unpredictable wind patterns the humans had navigated for centuries. "Hey, hello team in position." His radio crackled with Lieutenant Maria Gonzalez's voice from somewhere above. Her high-altitude paratroop squad had been waiting in the jet stream. Using weather patterns, the Valerians couldn't even detect a massive presence. "Submarine squad ready," came another report from Captain Derek Williams, whose deep-sea team lurked in the crushing depths of the Mariana Trench. "They still haven't figured out how to compensate for the pressure at this depth. Their ships are creaking like old submarines." Wei smiled grimly. Operation Earthborn was about to demonstrate why fighting humans on their home turf was a fatal mistake. "This is General Rodriguez. The overall command channel activated. All environmental warfare teams, execute synchronized attack pattern Delta. Show them what it means to fight an entire planet." The attack began simultaneously across Earth's most extreme environments. In the death zone of Everest, Wei's mountain warfare team emerged from positions the Valerians had dismissed as unsurvivable. Their bodies, adapted to high altitude and extreme cold through generations of evolution and training, moved with lethal efficiency. "Target their atmospheric processors," Wei ordered. "Let them experience our air as it really is up here." The mountain teams struck with precision, their specialized equipment targeting the complex systems the Valerians relied on to survive in Earth's varying atmospheric conditions. As the aliens' environmental systems failed, they discovered why humans called this altitude the death zone. Meanwhile, in the Mariana Trench, Captain Williams's deep-sea teams were turning the crushing pressure of the ocean depths into a weapon. The Valerians had assumed nothing could survive at such pressures without massive technological assistance. They never expected to face humans who had adapted to deep-sea operations through decades of evolution and training. "Pressure breach in their hull," Williams reported with satisfaction. "They're learning why we call it the crushing depth." In the Australian outback, Sergeant Sarah O'Connor's team was demonstrating why humans had thrived in one of Earth's most hostile and venomous environments. The Valerians' biosensors, calibrated for their own world's dangers, were useless against Earth's unique biological threats. "They can't handle our wildlife," O'Connor reported, as another alien patrol fell back in disarray from an encounter with creatures humans had learned to coexist with centuries ago. "Their environmental suits don't account for the sheer variety of biological threats we deal with daily." The coordination between teams was perfect, each group using their specific environmental expertise to maximum effect. When the Valerians retreated from the mountains, they found themselves harried by desert teams. When they pulled back from the oceans, Arctic warfare specialists were waiting. Every environment they had dismissed as too hostile became a killing ground where human adaptation proved superior to alien technology. New contact. The warning came from Orbital Command. Multiple Valerian capital ships entering atmosphere. They're heading for the Ring of Fire. Wei allowed himself a grim smile. The Valerians were about to make their biggest mistake yet. They thought Earth's most geologically unstable region would provide them a safe zone due to its uninhabitable conditions. They were about to learn why humans had built some of their greatest cities in the shadow of active volcanoes. Volcano Team, you're up, General Rodriguez ordered. Show them why we don't fear the fire of our own world. Dr. Yuki Tanaka's voice came over the command channel from her position near Mount Fuji, initiating Operation Pyroclast. They thought we were crazy to live near active volcanoes. Let's show them why we chose to harness their power instead of running from it. As the Valerian ships descended toward what they thought was safe ground, they discovered too late that humans had spent generations studying and adapting to volcanic conditions. Teams of specialists, their bodies and equipment adapted to extreme heat and toxic gases, emerged from hidden bases throughout the Ring of Fire. All teams, execute final phase, Rodriguez commanded. Let's show them the full fury of a death world unleashed. The coordinated attack was devastating. Mountain teams struck from above, while deep-sea squads emerged from below. Desert warriors turned the sand itself into a weapon, while Arctic specialists used the cold to their advantage. Every harsh environment that had forged humanity into what they were became a theater of war, where their natural adaptations proved superior to alien technology. They're breaking. The report came from multiple theaters simultaneously. The Valerian forces, their technological advantages neutralized by Earth's extreme conditions, were falling back in disarray. Wei watched from his mountain perch as alien ships struggled to escape Earth's atmosphere, many of them failing as their systems proved inadequate against conditions humans had adapted to over millennia. "This is why you don't invade a death world," he muttered, his words carried away by the fierce wind. "And why you never underestimate the species that calls it home." Supreme Commander Vex of the Valerian Harvester Fleet stood before the neural interface of his flagship, his crystalline form reflecting the chaos displayed on multiple tactical screens. What had begun as a routine harvest of a promising adaptive species had turned into a military disaster that threatened the very foundations of Valerian superiority. Another environmental systems failure in the Amazon sector, his second-in-command reported. "The humidity levels and biological diversity are overwhelming our containment protocols. We've lost contact with 3 more research teams." Vex's crystalline structure vibrated with frustration. The humans weren't just surviving in environments that should have been lethal. They were turning those environments into weapons. His forces, with their supposedly superior technology, were being systematically dismantled by a species that had evolved on what the Valerian Scientific Council had dismissed as a primitive death world. On the main tactical display, a new alert flashed. The humans had launched another coordinated strike, this time targeting Valerian landing zones in multiple climate zones simultaneously. The pattern was becoming clear and terrifying. They're not just adapted to survive these conditions, Vex realized aloud. They're adapted to thrive in them, to fight in them. Every environment we thought would give us safe harbor has become a death trap for our forces. In the Indonesian archipelago, human amphibious teams were demonstrating their ability to operate seamlessly between land and sea, a versatility that Valerian troops, specialized for specific environmental conditions, couldn't match. The humans' natural diving reflexes, evolved over millennia, allowed them to strike from underwater with minimal technological assistance, while Valerian forces required complex equipment just to function. The Arctic theater was even worse. Human teams had developed tactics that used the extreme cold to their advantage, deliberately targeting the energy-intensive heating systems that kept Valerian troops functional. Their own bodies, adapted through generations of evolution and training, required minimal support to operate in conditions that froze Valerian technology solid. New tactical analysis. The ship's AI announced, human adaptation capabilities exceed all previous models. Their responses to environmental challenges are not merely technological but biological and behavioral. They are evolving their tactics in real time. A holographic representation appeared, showing how human forces were combining their natural adaptations with minimal technology to maximize their advantages. While Valerian troops relied entirely on their environmental suits and support systems, humans used small, efficient technological aids to enhance their natural capabilities. "Sir," his science officer interrupted, "you need to see this." The display shifted to show biological readings from captured human specimens. Their adaptive responses. They're not just genetic. Their bodies are actively adapting to stresses within a single generation. The more we push them, the stronger they become. The revelation hit Vex like a physical blow. The Valerians had evolved in a controlled, perfect environment, using technology to overcome any challenges they faced. But humans had been forged in the crucible of a world that constantly tried to kill them. Their very biology was designed to face and overcome new challenges. "All forces fall back to primary landing zones," Vex ordered, his crystalline form dimming with the admission of defeat. "We need to reassess our entire approach." But the humans weren't about to give them that chance. General Rodriguez's voice broke through on all frequencies, a capability that should have been impossible given Valerian encryption. "You came to our world thinking technology could overcome evolution." Her voice was calm but carried an edge of steel. "You thought your advanced systems made you superior to a species that evolved on what you called a primitive death world. But you're learning now, aren't you? Learning why Earth's harsh conditions didn't kill us. They made us strong." Across the globe, human forces pressed their advantage. In the Himalayas, mountain warfare teams used their high-altitude adaptation to outmaneuver Valerian ships struggling with thin air and treacherous winds. In the Sahara, desert squads turned the burning sand and deadly heat into allies in their fight. Multiple breaches in forward bases, reports flooded in from all sectors. Environmental control systems failing across the board. Human forces they're herding us into zones where our technology is most vulnerable. Vex watched as his carefully planned harvest turned into a desperate fight for survival. The humans weren't just defending their world. They were demonstrating why they deserved to rule it. Each environment that should have been a weakness had become a strength. Each harsh condition had become a weapon in their arsenal. "Send the signal," he finally ordered, his crystalline form clouded with defeat. "All forces, initiate emergency protocol Omega. Prepare for immediate withdrawal." But as his ship struggled to break free from Earth's atmosphere, pursued by human forces who seemed to grow stronger with each engagement, Vex realized a terrible truth. They had come to study human adaptation, to harvest it for their own use. Instead, they had awakened something far more dangerous, a species that had turned their Deathworld origins into an unstoppable force. The tide hadn't just turned. It had become a tsunami. And the Valerians were about to learn the final lesson about challenging a Deathworld species on their home turf. General Maya Rodriguez stood on the observation deck of the captured Valerian flagship, watching Earth rotate beneath her. The once mighty Harvester fleet now drifted in orbit, their crystalline ships darkened and powerless, surrounded by the improvised space force humanity had cobbled together during the war. "Final status report," she commanded, her voice carrying the weight of victory, but also the wisdom gained from the conflict. Dr. Hassan appeared on the holographic display, her image showing her still in her desert warfare gear. "The last Valerian ground forces have surrendered in the Sahara. Their environmental systems couldn't handle the combination of heat, sand, and our tactical adaptations. They literally couldn't survive without our help." Similar reports flowed in from around the globe. From the deepest oceans to the highest mountains, from the frozen poles to the sweltering jungles, humanity had turned every inhospitable environment into a victory ground. But it was what they did next that would truly define them as a species. Supreme Commander Vex requests an audience, Lieutenant Chen reported. He says they've learned their lesson. Rodriguez nodded. Bring him to the observation deck. It's time he saw Earth through new eyes. When the Valerian leader arrived, his crystalline form had lost much of its former luster. The species that had come to harvest humanity now stood humbled before them, their supposed superiority shattered by the very adaptability they had sought to study. Your world, Vex began, his translated voice carrying a note of awe. We called it a death world. We saw its harsh conditions as proof of its primitive nature. We were wrong. Rodriguez turned to face him. You weren't wrong about Earth being the death world, she replied. You were wrong about what that meant. Every challenge this planet threw at us made us stronger. Every hostile environment forced us to adapt, to innovate, to evolve. We didn't just survive here. We learned to thrive in conditions that would kill most species. The holographic displays showed scenes from the war. Human desert teams moving through sandstorms that stripped the paint from Valerian machines, deep-sea squads operating at pressures that crushed alien submarines, mountain warriors fighting in air too thin for their enemies to breathe. But do you know what truly makes us different? Rodriguez continued. It's not just our ability to survive in these conditions. It's our ability to help others survive them too. She gestured to the medical bays below, where human doctors were treating injured Valerian soldiers, teaching them techniques developed over centuries of surviving in Earth's various environments. In the Sahara, desert warfare specialists were showing defeated Valerian troops how to navigate the dunes without relying on their failed technology. In the Arctic, human teams were teaching the aliens how to truly understand and work with extreme cold rather than just trying to shut it out. We could have left your soldiers to die in our hostile environments, Rodriguez said. Instead, we're teaching them what we learned over millennia of evolution, that true adaptation isn't about dominating the environment. It's about becoming part of it. Vex's crystalline structure shifted in what might have been shame. We came to harvest your adaptability, thinking we could take it by force. But it's not something that can be taken, is it? It must be earned, learned, lived. Exactly, Rodriguez nodded. And that's why Earth is sending ships out into the galaxy now. Not to conquer, not to harvest, but to teach. Every harsh environment on our world taught us something valuable. Now it's time to share those lessons. The observation deck fell silent as Earth rose before them. Its varied environments, deserts, oceans, mountains, and jungles, all visible from orbit. What the Valerians had seen as obstacles to be overcome, humanity had turned into sources of strength. Your people have changed everything, Vex admitted. The galaxy believed that technical advancement was the measure of civilization. You've proven that the ability to adapt, to work with rather than against nature, is far more powerful. Rodriguez smiled. We're children of a death world, Commander Vex. But that doesn't mean we're dealers in death. It means we're survivors, teachers, adapters. And now that we've earned our place among the stars, we're going to change how the galaxy thinks about evolution, adaptation, and what it truly means to be advanced. As humanity's first starships prepared to launch, carrying teams of environmental specialists to help other worlds learn from Earth's harsh lessons, the message was clear. The species that had evolved on a death world hadn't just proved their right to exist. They had shown the galaxy a new path forward. The age of the Deathworlders had begun, not with conquest, but with the promise of teaching others how to turn their greatest challenges into their greatest strengths.